Liz, I noticed something funny. I've been watching you for a while on Google Plus, but I did not know that you started in 1997, according to your company's bio, on Linux and Unix type software. What happened before 1997? Were you doing software then? How did you get to here?
I was a solo mother at home, high school dropout,
Oh,
and I basically got a computer because my sister had this IRC thing to chat, and so I got that, and then I started programming the client because I wanted an away thingy. That's what I call it, an away thingy. And someone said, "Hey, you can program the whole of Linux if you get Linux." And at that point, I don't think you even had X Windows, and if you did, you had to be like a genius to kind of figure it out.
right.
And but I got Linux installed. Some guy came over and helped me, and I promptly lost the root password. But it's okay because some other guy hacked me. At my request to give me my root password from the internet. I don't know who he was. Um, and so yeah, I pretty much used Linux from quite early on in my computer usage versus the average user who kind of works with Windows for many, many years. But I think in some cases that's been a pro for me because I learnt the Linux way the first time round. I didn't learn the Windows way and then have to relearn everything or try and apply Windows dynamics to Unix. So for me, the formatting of partitions and all that was just natural to me because that's why I'd always done it, you see. So yeah, it worked quite well.
I noticed the Slackware in your series. I'd like to hear a little bit about. My first Linux was Slackware upon the recommendation of someone. I was coming from FreeBSD, so it wasn't like I had no idea what was going on. But as far as Linux distros, so you went from I don't know what to Slackware to you are Red Hat.
I had
Now, why the
Red Hat,
progression?
I had Red Hat that somebody else had installed,
Hmm.
and that was the one I didn't really use, didn't really do anything much. And I thought, if I'm going to know this, I should install it myself. And so I installed Slackware because Slackware was cool. Everyone knew that the coolest hackers had Slackware because it means you're hard. You've got no package manager. You've got no easy peasy GUIs. It was, you had to be tough to kind of handle that one. So anyone was Slackware. These pussies using package managers and etc. etc. I think that was kind of the attitude back then a
I
lot.
see. Yeah, I didn't know
Whereas
that.
now,
I didn't know that. I just did what the guy. I asked somebody who was into Linux. I said, "What's the Linux distro I should go?" Slackware would be good. He didn't tell me that, but now that you mention it, I remember that there wasn't a package management and all that. That
yeah,
was God. What are
there
we
was
talking about?
actually.
We're talking about Slackware 4 or 5 or something, right?
I think
Back
it was
then.
4. It
Yeah.
was then 5. They jumped to 7 after 4 because
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to catch up with the Red Hat versions or something.
All
I'm
right.
not
Okay.
entirely sure. Slackware did actually have a package manager, but I didn't realize that at the time, and I was so used to compiling things by then. And you got the old round loop of compiling, so you'll compile one thing which relies on something else, which relies on something else, which actually relies on the first thing that you wanted to install.
I hate that. But
Yeah,
so before
anyone who's compiled
IRC.
Qt knows what I'm talking about.
There was an internet. We're not talking about the 1900s here. There was internet, and I'd like to know what your very first experience on internet was, or what was the first view you had of the net itself. Do you remember?
My sister, she's actually disabled, and so they said we can. She had an electric typewriter to help her type, and she eventually got to the point they said you can have a new typewriter or you can have one of these new computer things. And she'd seen computer things, computers elsewhere, and she ended up getting an Apple, and so she went online and she used to use Archie and IRC chat, and that's pretty much I saw her doing stuff, and I was like, oh, I could never figure out the Archie thing much. But the chat thing was like, hey, that's cool. You can actually talk to people in other
Yeah.
places on this computer thing. So I saved up and got an old 486 DX100, I think it was. And that's pretty much, as a solo parent, I couldn't go out and meet people, and I couldn't go out and do anything. So to me, this was a way of going out and meeting people and doing stuff without actually going out and doing stuff. Kids go to bed at night, I can get on the computer and. So I had a 14.4 modem, and yeah, that's pretty much, for me, it was about talking to people and communicating with people more than the information side, which came kind of later on, once I realized that there's more to the internet than just this. So
I think we share a lot in common because the equipment you're talking about, the DX40 and that whole Pentium 3 and 2, 1 maybe even. No, before then, all of the CPUs and all of the modem speeds. I had a 14400. You could convert it. There was a firmware update to 28.8 and so on. So we've kind of been through the same things, and that's funny. I've never touched Archie, but as I mentioned to you in an SSH thread a while back, my first delight was connecting to the Library of Congress through Telnet. I mean, today it's unimaginable that the Library of Congress or anybody else would be using, because no one uses Telnet anymore. But and I just went to a menu, and that was it. But I thought, this is interesting, but I didn't have anything. I didn't know what to look up. Nothing I wanted to know. It's just that it was an amazing breakthrough, I thought.
Yeah, I remember using Telnet because someone gave me an email, and I used Telnet to connect to the server and used.
Right.
And I think I had to type in Pine, and I'd literally been given these instructions on IRC and a notepad. Telnet this, type this in, and that was your email. And I had no idea quite what I was doing or how I was doing this until years later. I was looking back and saying, wow, I was actually, telnetting into the server. You didn't have a mail client on your PC. You didn't use POP. You telnetted to the server, and you used a Pine equivalent or something like that. I think it was Pine, actually. But, yeah, it was just quite funny looking back at what I was doing previously. So, and also I do recall my sister using Telnet to connect to IRC and talk, because it was easier. Somehow, I'm not sure how or why, but
the only thing anybody uses Telnet for anymore is to see, to do quick checks on a mail server by, doing the commands directly too.
That previous history of being stuck with Slackware with no X windows for many months, up to a year. That's how I check my mail all the time. So
yeah,
it's a really handy thing to know how to text. Off by out, you can just kind of Telnet, and all the commands and all how to do everything, because that's how I got my email for at least almost a year, I think, just Telnet.
So how did you get in? Presumably you're doing programming, or do you do just the management side of operating systems?
Mostly managing servers. I mean, as I said, you tend to know a lot of programming languages because you're often debugging things, either other people's codes, like web developers who go, I've got a problem with this seg faulting, this page not working, whatever. Can you find out what it is? And you've got to find the errors, fix the code, or whatever. And then there's also, of course, shell scripts, which are they can get pretty mammoth. And then you'll use Perl regex on a regular basis for various things, even through sed, awk, or something else. So it's kind of bundled. It's not a job that I do all the time, but it's something that you have to know to be able to do together properly. So yeah, I did start out wanting to do more programming, but I ended up people assumed because you use Linux you must know everything, and I didn't. But they'd ask me questions, and I didn't want to appear stupid, so I would quickly find out and look online and figure it out, and then tell them, and they just assumed that I already knew it, and I was just this knowledge base. So that's kind of how I started out and started learning and learning these kind of things. And that's pretty much, I reckon I get paid to Google pretty much just, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? So I'll Google it. Okay, you do it like this, and then.
Well, it's amazing because the human mind only has so much capacity. So I think that we all probably, anyone who messes with Linux, for example, shares, is there anyone who never types man to look at, for example, some of the more obscure find flags or options? Find is a great example because it's one of the most useful things ever on any system. And there's a lot of options and flags, and it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, it is. It's fantastic. I often, my main operating system is OS 10 on the Mac, but I mean, if there wasn't a console, I wouldn't own a Mac. The fact that you can drop down and mess with all of that stuff at that level. So I totally get that, even though I don't do the day-to-day. You went all the way through, if I may say, the tunnel to Ubuntu, right? So apparently there's a whole bunch of variations of that. Is that what you use day-to-day?
I use Kubuntu at the moment because I don't like Unity much.
Okay.
Because I work on servers all day, every day, I get home, I don't want to muck around fixing my own computer. I just want it to just work, which is pretty much why I've moved towards the Debian type derivatives, because I get home, I've got children as well. I've got, I mean, they're all teenagers now, but I've got to make meals. I get up at 5:30 in the morning to go to the gym. I don't want to be sitting there compiling things or fixing things on my own computer.
Right.
I want it to just work. So I fix servers all day as a job, which I enjoy doing, and I do love doing it, but I don't want to come home and do the same thing again. I'd like to do other things as well and have hobbies and have a life as well. So that's quite important. So that's pretty much, and I'd happily change. Actually, I'm quite fickle. I've tried quite a few different distros, and I just found that the Ubuntu at the moment just works. So yeah.
But the religious wars thing is absurd to me. I mean, once you find something you like, I like Slackware. I don't think I ever moved to anything else from Slackware. I don't use Linux from day to day now, but I think that once I settled into it, I thought, hey, this is great. Of course, I should mention that I had no Windows at all, no XWin. I never installed it. I thought, oh, that's too heavy for this Pentium 1 or whatever it was. And so, all I saw was the console. But I thought, hey, this is fantastic. Question for you, because you work with Linux and programming and scripts and stuff all day long, probably. So, are there approaches to life that you try to optimize in the same way as you would on a computer? In a script, you're looking for loops, for example. At least I would be. It's going, hey, this is where everything is happening. So this is where we need to be most efficient. Is there any kind of philosophy in life, like cooking or anything else you do, that where you're applying this acquired methodology that you're using day to day?
I think on an everyday basis, you kind of see things and you think, I notice we're doing this an awful lot. We could be doing this more efficiently by doing this or doing that. Like we've got we've moved house 6 months ago, and this house has the toilet in the bathroom. So with 3 kids sharing a toilet in a bathroom, you can guarantee somebody's going to be in the shower while someone wants to go to the toilet, and there's a problem. So, I was like, there's got to be a way. We're going to redo the bathroom and split the toilet off separate eventually, but it's not on the immediate list to do. So I was thinking of interim things. So I ended up getting bathrobes, and I said, you walk to the bathroom in your bathrobe, and therefore you're cutting down your time getting undressed and getting dressed and doing your hair in the bathroom. You're just literally in, you shower, you're out, and it's just more of a efficiency thing to try and make that happen a little bit quicker and smoother. And the same thing goes for just heaps of things. Just making it so you don't have to be lazy. It's a lazy type thing, isn't it? Getting things automated so they work a bit smoother and better and more.
Isn't that what programming is about, though? It's the laziness of first of all, and it's not a bad laziness. First of all, you Google to see if anybody else has done the function you're looking for, rather than reinvent it. Seeing the code, nowadays that's more easier because of all the libraries that are available. So anything to do with JavaScript, I mean, you just look and somebody's already probably done. It's probably already in the query libs. So that's an amazing thing that has changed greatly over my time in all this. Wanted to ask you if I'm going to assume that you have a smartphone. Almost everybody on the planet does.
Yeah.
How do you see that phone in your life? Is it mostly do you do mostly voice calls, mostly text, or a whole bunch of apps and computing, like personal assistant stuff?
I have a few thousand free texts and 100 free minutes and a couple of gig of data that I'm allowed to use on my plan, of which I, if you're lucky, use 10 texts, about 2 minutes of calls, and all the data. So I'd prefer people to email me than ring me, and I just don't use my phone for phone calls at all. And I use it for sharing internet. I use it for Ingress.
Ingress,
I use
okay.
It's been used for everything, and I even have a extra thick battery so it lasts longer, because some of those things are quite intensive. So and they actually paid off the other day when we had a power cut for 16 hours and we had to work. So we plug in phone, share internet phone, use laptops, and then we ended up just driving around trying to find somewhere we could recharge the laptops for the day. just so it could work, you know. So that paid off, I suppose. But
So it's funny because a lot of people are one way or the other. I personally don't need very many minutes on the phone. It's extremely rare that I talk on the phone. I do like the text thing because it's sort of replaced what the fax was at one time, which was you don't have to be disturbed by it, but at least you can send some information. It's very limited, of course.
I'm always surprised when people use faxes these days.
No,
like, wow, you got a fax. That's vintage.
No, our motto is fax must die in the VoIP Users Conference. But yeah, I mean, why would you use fax? You just can email the document.
The kids tend to text a lot as well, actually. They use text more than data, so they don't really use as much data. Though they also pay for their own plans, so that's probably why.
That's an excellent optimization flag, having the kids pay for their own phone plans.
Yeah, otherwise they just waste it, and then I have to pay for it. Now, if they work for things, they appreciate it. So that's how things work around here. And that goes for the internet as well. They get, allotted hours, and if they do more tasks, they get, more, less, depending on what the behaviour's like as well. So, yeah.
So, Liz, are you into community? Linux is a very communal type organization. I mean, obviously, because you need to find things, you need people to work with. Is that something that you like to do, or have been doing, or not enough, or too much, or what?
I like to help people. I like to help people with, and that's always been a big thing. I quite like helping people with problems, because quite often you'll see someone with a problem, and they'll either get incorrect information or no information at all, and that's quite big for me. But I don't often have a lot of spare time to do a lot of that. I'm a moderator on the Linux community on Google+, which is 60-something thousand members, I think. And I quite like going through there, and quite often it's easy stuff that most people who have used Linux have kind of dealt with, package manager stuff or installing something or what's the equivalent to this. And they're easy questions most of the time, and other times they're obscure things, but it's a good feeling when you get something for somebody that 20 other people have tried to help them with, and you just go, oh, it's blah, do this, and they're, oh, cool, and it's just really good feeling that that they're not gonna forget that. They'll remember because they spent so much time trying to figure out what it was.
That's a perfect loop back to the beginning of our talk. When you first got on IRC and you asked technical questions, did you get the RTFM response that you yourself never give people nowadays? Is that how you knew that you need help?
And worse yet, they tell you what application, but not how. I remember I tried to get my mouse going in console because it didn't have X1 as well. And I remember saying, how do I get my mouse going? And people would just say, GDM. And I'm like, what's that? What do I do with that? Where do I find that? I didn't know what my man pages were, so I had no idea that I could type man GDM. And then when I finally did figure that one out, I was like, whoa, this is freaky. And eventually someone saw that I had no mouse about 3 months in. I think it actually was my husband when I just met him. And he also was a Linux user. And he came along and goes, oh, GDM space -1 device equals blah. Bing. Oh, wow. That was all. That was it, And so it would have been a lot nicer if someone had just told me that one line, and I would have been, oh, cool. And then I would have tried to break it down to figure out what those things were that I was doing, Yeah,
this whole culture of you're not worthy unless you can find it for yourself is really passé. I think there's probably less of it now. I don't hang out that much on IRC. We have our own channel, and we, during our sessions, but it's all the people we know. But if you dropped into, say, I don't know, FreeBSD or something, I used to go there all the time. I think that's probably reduced, that whole attitude of people maybe just ignore you, but hopefully they don't.
There are always those people who want to be spoon-fed, though. There are always going to be those users who don't want to help themselves. They don't want to understand what that GDM command does or what all the switches are. They're not interested. They just want it to go and to be cool. And those kind of people are a little bit annoying and frustrating to deal with. I do tend to be more inclined to help those who help themselves. So you go, oh, you do it like this, and they actually kind of go, oh, so what does this mean and what does that mean? So they're actually interested in what they're doing. They're not just kind of copy-pasting commands, or, they're actually have got an interest in what they're doing, and they want to help themselves, and they want to learn, and they want to, because I enjoy learning, and I think learning's quite an important part of life. You quit learning and your brain stops,
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with you. I think that you do need, when people are asking you questions, they do need to follow up and look. And it's frustrating to talk to people who are just looking for the commands to paste in, unless they're totally out of their realm and they're going to do it once. But if you hang out on an IRC channel, there are people who do that day after day. And they keep asking for basically what is free consulting sometimes. So yeah, there's that other side of it too.
Yeah.
Let me take a page from Randall Schwartz's book and ask you, because you have to use editors day after day. What's your favorite editor? He asks that on Floss Weekly all the time, and it's a pretty good question actually for people. You must use an editor daily.
It's clearly the better one, which is Vim.
Okay, Vim. No, that's not what the one I use. But yeah,
and not the crappy Debian NVI thing, which drives me insane.
Well, you know, when you spend your life in an editor, I don't know if that's the case for you, but when you're spending a lot of time in an editor, it's worth finding one that you really need.
Yeah. Sometimes people don't always have that installed on servers that I'm working on, so you do tend to be able to use most editors, you know. And I think probably the default is either Vim or Nano or something along those lines, which is generally fairly easy to use.
Yeah.
When it comes to Emacs, I just change the editor.
It's funny how people love it. It's funny how people love and hate it.
I do need to spend more time and figure it out. My boss uses it all the time and gives me hassles about it, you say. So.
Final question, Liz. I asked in our messages, which kept getting crossed by Google+, but is there any project or link or anything that you would like people to take a look at, other than yourself, of course? You're a good person to follow on Google+, Liz Quilty. But yeah, you should follow yourself. But other than that, anything you're doing in particular that you'd like to raise awareness or send people to, or?
I can't think of anything. I do write quite a few blog posts on blog.remuhosting.com for work. So there's kind of how-to scripts, debugging, quite a bit of stuff on there. Otherwise, you can usually Google my name and there's a few things, but there's no one thing. I'm actually working on getting into some electronic stuff and working with some Arduino and some other bits and pieces, but I haven't actually done anything or posted anything anywhere online about that much yet. So
great. Well, we'll be watching for that. That interests a lot of our people. So fantastic. Thanks for taking the time, Liz. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy person.
Thank you very much. It was actually excellent.
Okay. You take care of yourself.